What is up, YouTube? This is Nanashi, back with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile video. This time I'll be showing you the changes and updates to my zombie deck. The recent ban list changes didn't really do too much for the deck, and the build is relatively the same as it was before. But a certain card finally came back to 3, and now that it is, I decided to play a more fun version of this zombie deck, taking advantage of the fact that it likes to have a lot of its cards banished, and basically putting it in the hands of RN Jesus for the sake of some of the most hilarious wins you will ever see out of a zombie deck ever. But you'll see what I mean when we take a closer look. Starting with the monsters, we have one Shiranui Spectral Sword. He banishes himself and another zombie out of the graveyard to perform a Phantom Synchro Summon, whose level is equal to the monsters that you banished. One Shiranui Spectral Sword Shay. By tributing himself, he can resummon any 2 zombies that are currently banished, as long as one of them's a Shiranui monster, and they're both played in defense mode. It's more of a mid to late game card rather than an early game card. Unizombie at 3, however, is the exact opposite. You can target a face-up monster on the field and either send a card from your hand to the graveyard to increase its level by 1, or send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard to increase its level by 1. And he sets up the vast majority of your zombie plays. Gozuki tends to do that as well, but I only play him at 2 because 3 just felt like overkill. As a heart once per turn, he lets you send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if he's sent to the graveyard from anywhere, you can banish any zombie out of the graveyard to special summon a zombie out of the hand. So he has playability pretty much any time of the game, so long as you at least have one other card in the grave. Pretty much the same applies to Mizuki, who, by banishing himself, resummons any zombie out of the graveyard. The resummoning capabilities of zombies out of the graveyard is literally their bread and butter. Unless, of course, you're looking at the triple copies of Necroface and wondering what in the world I'm talking about. When he's normal summoned, you can shuffle all banished cards back into the owner's decks and he gains 100 attack for each one that was returned this way, but when he's banished, both players have to banish the top 5 cards of their decks face up. Shiranui can play off of this heavily. Starting with the single copy of Shiranui Samurai. During either turn, he can banish a zombie out of the graveyard to give himself an extra 600 points and banish anything he battles. Also, if he would be banished, you can add any Shiranui monster from grave back to hand. I kinda wanna play him in more than one, but right now, based on the room in the deck, 1 seems fine. What you should always be running at 3 is Shiranui Solitaire. He tributes a zombie you control to special summon any zombie tutor monster with 0 defense from the deck. Also, if he were banished, he can target any banished Shiranui monster and summon it back to your field. And with the number of monsters you're banishing off of your multiple Necrofaces, you're going to get this effect off more often than not. Especially with Shiranui Spirit Master in your deck at 3. When he's normal summoned, he special summons any Shiranui from your hand or graveyard except a copy of himself, but the card you pulled is vanished when it leaves the field. Also, if he's banished, you can target a face-up card the opponent controls and destroy it. Can you just imagine triggering all these effects at once off of a single Necroface? It happens more often than you think. And Shiranui Squire at 2 adds to that. When she's normal summoned, you can special summon a Shiranui Spectral Sword monster from your hand or deck. And if she's banished, you get a draw 1, discard 1. Moving into the spell cards, we have a playset of Allura Darkness. Draw 2 cards, banish a dark out of your hand, or drop your entire hand. A pair of Book of Life, mostly because 3 just kinda seemed like overkill. He resummons a zombie out of your graveyard by banishing an opponent's monster out of the graveyard as well. A playset of Call by the Grave. 1 Foolish Burial, and if you're not running this in zombies, I genuinely have a lot of questions. 1 Gold Sark, banishing any card out of your deck for 2 turns, then putting it in your hand. More often than not, you're going to be hitting Shiranui monsters with this, but once again, Necroface exists. 1 Instant Fusion, and it is a shame that card went down from 3 to 1, but I am still able to make it useful. 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Raigeki because I can't afford Lightning Storm, and Twin Twisters because there's plenty of stuff I want to get out of my hand as quickly as possible, and you may not always be able to rely on Shiranui Squire. And the only trap card I'm running in this deck is Shiranui Style Swallow Sash. Tribute a zombie, target 2 cards the opponent controls, destroy them, then banish a Shiranui monster out of the deck. Next we move into the side deck. Right now I'm still running the playset each of Dark Ruler No More, Herald of the Abyss, Solemn Johnson, Solemn Strike, and Solemn Warning. And finally, we finish up with the extra deck. Since we only have one instant fusion, I'm just going to be running the one Reaper on the Nightmare. Archfiend Zombie Skull. Just like Reaper on the Nightmare, he can't be summoned legitimately, he has to be played off a different effect in this particular deck. In this case, it's Shiranui Spectral Swords, but while he's face up, your zombie monsters can't be destroyed by card effects. 1 Shiranui Samurai Saga. He has a quick effect that lets you return a banished zombie back to your deck, and if your opponent controls any monsters who have less attack than the monster than you returned, they all go to defense position. Also, if he happens to be banished, you can target an opponent's monster and reduce its attack by 500. 1 Red Eyes Zombie Necro Dragon. He gains 100 attack and defense for each zombie monster on the field and in either graveyard, and when another zombie monster is destroyed by battle, he lets me resummon any zombie monster from either graveyard to my field. 1 Shiranui Squire Saga. Far more versatile and useful than I ever expected this card to be. I am genuinely impressed. As a hard once per turn, you can banish a monster off your field or in your graveyard, and depending on what that card was, she will give you multiple effects. By banishing a zombie, you give all monsters you control 300 attack. If that monster happened to be a fire, you can destroy a spell trap on the field. And if that monster happened to be a synchro, then you can destroy a monster on the field as well. You can get all 3 just by banishing any Shiranui Synchro monster. And speaking of Shiranui Synchro, we have a playset of Shiranui Shogun Saga. When he's special summoned, he banishes any zombie out of my graveyard and gives himself attack points equal to what was banished. And if he's destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave, I can return any banished zombie with 0 defense back into my graveyard. 1 YuGiOh the Graceful Mayakashi. It has the ability to resummon itself if a level 11 Synchro monster is destroyed on my field, which doesn't come up hardly at all anymore, but if she herself is resummoned from the graveyard, I get to destroy an opponent's monster, without targeting. 1 Shiranui Sun Saga. If he's special summoned, I can return any of my zombie-type synchros in my grave or banished back to my extra deck and then freely destroy that many cards my opponent controls. Also, while he's face up, if a zombie monster or monsters I control would be destroyed, I can just banish a Shiranui monster out of my graveyard to offset the destruction for all of them. 1 Advendred Savior. The only effect on him that really matters in this deck is that if he battles, I can send any zombie monster from my deck to the graveyard and reduce my opponent's monster's attack that he's battling by 200 per level it had until the end of the turn. I'm playing a pair of Vampire Sucker. You can resummon an opponent's monster to their field in defense mode by treating it as a zombie monster. If a zombie monster is resummoned from either player's graveyard as a hard once per turn, I'm permitted to draw a card, and if I were to play high-level zombie monsters, this card would allow me to tribute an opponent's zombie monster as material to tribute summon that monster. I also run 1 copy of Shiranui Skill Saga Supremacy. Synchro monsters I control can't be destroyed by card effects, fire monsters I control can't be destroyed by battle, and during the opponent's turn, I get to resummon any banished zombie's synchro monster to a zone she points to. And finally, we run 1 copy of YuGiOh the Absolute Zero Mayakashi. First off, she's absolutely beautiful, her artwork is phenomenal. I can only control 1 of her at a time. Any monsters that my opponent has banished cannot activate their effects. And if a monster is special summoned from the graveyard or a monster effect is activated in the graveyard, except the damage step, I can target one other face-up monster on the field and change its attack to 0, then negate its effects. And this effect can be used up to twice per turn. And that is the deck. Do I think that this build is better than it used to be? Honestly, I think it's about the same. The only real difference is that when you leave the chance of it doing well into something like Necroface being banished off of Gozuki, or a Lure of Darkness, or a Necroface, the RNGesus aspect does a lot more than I was expecting it to. And while I am not a huge fan of leaving everything into the hands of RNGesus, for whatever reason, seeing it happen in this particular deck is nothing short of entertaining. I thank you guys for watching the deck profile video. If you can think of any ways that I can improve this all-zombie deck, feel free to let me know. In the meantime, this has been Nanashi, signing out.
I don't know what you said, something outside